and I want to welcome us once again to the Omics Research Symposium 2021. This symposium has been put together to bring together students, researchers, faculty, and industry to discuss relevant and recent advances in omics data and bioinformatics. And so some of the focus of this scientific gathering includes learning about bioinformatics and the cutting edge research and applications therein, to also get informed about undergraduate, masters, and PhD programs in bioinformatics, to learn about career guidance and industry internships and jobs, and also opportunities for bioinformaticians that exist in, in these various applicable fields. And likewise, to equally look at opportunity at discussing how resources for training and education can be made effective. And so as part of this, during this session, we would, under the OmicsLogic Africa segment, we'll be looking further into the changing role of bioinformatics in research, industry, and education. And in doing that, we'll be moving into the panel discussion where I have some experts in-house to help, provide perspectives to, topical questions we would be looking at. This afternoon, I have with me on this panel, Dr. Anita Ghansah, who just finished speaking with us. She is a fellow at the Noguchi Memorial Institute for Medical Research, Ghana, and I have a pleasure of having her on set to yet, benefit from her wealth of experience. Dr. Anita Ghansah, you're welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Thank you very much. Also, I have with me Dr. Voke Toye. She is the Chief Executive Officer, Biology Support Service Nigeria, and she is the founder of the organization, and she's actually very passionate about biosciences, capacity building in biotech, as well as the business of biotechnology and how to harness the untapped opportunities, especially in the Nigerian bioeconomy. Dr. Toye, you're welcome on set. Hello, Dr. Toye, are you there?
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. We are happy to have you. I have also with me Hamza, Mr. Hamza Sani. He is a data scientist and fellow of the Medical Laboratory Science Council of Nigeria. And he is a data science enthusiast with keen interest in using bioinformatics research to answer biological questions around blood, parasites, and infections. I'd like to also mention that Mr. Hamza currently serves as the Quality Health Safety and Environment Executive for Afloat Limited, which is an aviation fueling company in Nigeria. Mr. Hamza, we are pleased to have you. Are you on set?
Definitely. Good afternoon. It's nice being on ground.
Thank you very much. Okay, last but not the least, we have also on set Dr. Adrienne Leussa. Dr. Adrienne Leussa is a researcher, a lecturer, and a business development expert in NGS and biotechnology from the South Africa. She's also honored, she's also a sales professional and commercial lead for Illumina in 12 countries of the Southern Africa. I'm sure we know Illumina a lot. It's one of the platforms that is very, reputable for, what we are here talking about when we talk about NGS, that's generation sequencing. All right, so Adrienne is also an independent non-executive board member of Omics Data Solutions, Proprietary Limited, and she is a freelance scientific editor, medicine with Cactus Communications Incorporated, and also she is the founder and co-director of Contemporary Africans Mentoring, a not-for-profit mentoring company. We are very pleased to have Dr. Adrienne Leussa with us. Dr. Adrienne Leussa, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much for having me.
Great, great. Thank you all for being here. Myself, I'm Adekunle, like I introduced before. I'm the program director for OmicsLogic Africa and the faculty with Lead City University here in Nigeria. I'm a principal partner at Eureka and also the program director for OmicsLogic Africa. And I'm privileged to lead two health tech startups as its founder and CEO. They are pre-diagnosed and screened. And I'm also a faculty with, Lead City University in Nigeria. So it's my pleasure being here today to moderate this session. Without wasting time, I'd like us to move on. As I introduced earlier on, we'll be moderating this session, and I'm honored to have all our panelists on board. And what we'll be looking at is bioinformatics needs and training in Africa. As we all know, bioinformatics today is shaping scientific research and helping us to derive more information and knowledge about genes and their functions, and also in finding its application to various human diseases, such as cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes, just to mention a few. Okay, it has aided research in evolutionary process by allowing comparison of DNA sequences, sharing of data, prediction of future evolution, and classification of complex evolutionary processes. And so the future also holds a lot for bioinformatics in that it is going to help us to obtain crucial management decisions on drug discovery, just like someone asked earlier during one of the sections. Okay. And it is going to be something that is not going to, left to the domain of biology alone, but also bioinformatics, bioinformaticians and using their bioinformatics tools and knowledge would be playing a key role in this aspect. And that is why we want to, in this session, discuss around bioinformatics needs and training in setting. All right. And so without further ado, we want to move straight to my first question, which I would like Dr. Anita to please, open the floor. Okay, so my question would be, how has bioinformatics as a field developed, in Africa? All right, and how does it continue to evolve, and what are some of the major challenges, moving forward, and especially brought about as a result of the recent pandemic? All right, Dr. Anita, would you open the floor with that?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that the past 15 or so years has seen a growing interest in bioinformatics across Africa. I remember around 2009, I personally was the only person talking about bioinformatics at my institution when I returned from school. I mean, it was so far-fetched, but today, everybody knows the need for bioinformatics. And what comes to mind is the H3 Africa initiative by the National Institute of Health of the USA that has funded bioinformatics support. The H3 Africa is a human heredity and health grant support for human genetics in Africa. And out of this grant is the H3 Africa Bionet. And this Bionet for the past 20 years has extensively trained Africans in bioinformatics, mainly in the southern part of Africa, but countries across Africa, including Ghana, Nigeria, Tunisia, Egypt, Southern Africa, across Africa, have benefited from this training. But there is still a huge gap. There still remains this very huge gap in bioinformatics training. And for me, the pandemic has been a blessing in disguise. We took the silver lining of this pandemic, and online training in bioinformatics is something that shot up during this pandemic. And I think that that is what I would say to start with. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much. I like Dr. Voke to equally weigh in on that question. Talking about what are some of those major challenges brought by the pandemic. Of course, looking at it from the perspective of how bioinformatics is actually involving in the African continent. Dr. Voke, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Adekunle, and thank you for your contribution, Dr. Anita. Okay, yes, bioinformatics even though it's been around for quite a while, we're only beginning to get things going on here in Africa. I first heard about bioinformatics during my master's in the year 2003, and it's quite new to me. And I felt that it was something that was very necessary with the kind of data that was coming out from the Human Genome Project and other sequencing projects. Moving forward and getting to do some studies here in Nigeria, realized that we really didn't have even the plan on how we were going to move bioinformatics, forward here in Nigeria. And I think that was also because even our genomics hadn't even picked up, because it's very difficult to talk about bioinformatics without genomics and understanding the basis of this data. So you would really just be, struggling to figure out what is going on. Okay. So the challenges are many, and they're quite deep-rooted. We have gaps in our training that is very obvious across universities, and also gaps in having the right people to teach. So when we don't have the right people to teach, then it is difficult to pass on the knowledge. So we still struggle a lot with that. And so some of the things that you will notice is that there have been quite a bit of efforts from different groups. Dr. Anita has mentioned H3 Africa, who have been very, very, very instrumental in bridging the gaps in training. Yeah. We've had a group called the Nigerian Bioinformatics Network. I don't know if you know that. So I've been part of them as well, trying to increase awareness and get people to realize the need and importance of bioinformatics. We held a conference in 2019. Prior to this, we've had some support and partnerships with Global Health Workshop, the University of Calgary. And this has helped in, first of all, training students at the University of Lagos and other communities in genomics techniques and also with basic bioinformatics. These gaps are still there. We find that even when we have some of these trainings, the students are eager to learn and all, but suddenly once they come in, the gaps that are there make it difficult for them to, move forward. And you just find out that, when you start a training with about 50 to 100 people, by the end of the training of 3 months, you probably just have maybe a handful, and you realize that they just couldn't flow. Okay, so we need to find a way to address these challenges of getting the younger generation or the current generation to be able to fit into these trainings or have that basic background to enable them get the best out of the trainings that we are beginning to bring in right now. So bioinformatics have moved from where we were 10 years ago. Now we are talking about multi-omics. We are looking at variations of data and trying to make sense of it. So it's a lot that we have to do, and we just have to figure out how we are going to get our students fully on board on what they have to really do. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for that. Dr. Voke mentioned about, the aspect of, faculties to teach, to train interesting participants. And equally, you mentioned the aspect of, the bioinformatics in Nigeria taking up as a result of, recent grant and effort. Howbeit, many of the participants get to draw back, at the middle of the training, which points to the fact of the need for basics. Well, without taking much, I think I will want to also hear from Dr. Adrienne to get a perspective of what it is like, from the Southern African parts of the continent. So, would you want to say maybe in passing a few things quickly regarding what has been some of the challenges that has been identified?
Okay, thank you. I will just add a few because my previous co-hosts have already covered quite extensively on this question.
Yes.
I would say what the pandemic has brought as change is it has enabled Africans to see that we should and we can be autonomous when it comes to scientific development. You know, with the pandemic and the borders closed and the supply chain challenges that came as a result of the pandemic, we've seen that we've now become a little bit more innovative in our thinking. But not only that, the world has also realized that you cannot isolate excellence in terms of technology. So in the past, it was very skewed, you know, the genomics technology as well as the bioinformatics expertise. But now seeing that you have to, I mean, should anything like this happen and borders are closed, the world has to keep going. The pandemic, the virus had to still keep being monitored and surveyed across the world to prevent variants from emerging, or at least to notice when they do emerge. And it has made it such that the world is now invested in having every other part of the world as capacitated as any other. We can go into details on this aspect, but what I'm trying to say is there's been a lot of investment in capacity building in Africa, but not as an isolation. It's actually a drive to make it a global movement so that the genomics revolution is not isolated in bits and parts of the world, but is actually global in its distribution. So that will be what I would add on this question. We can go into the details as we progress.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. I mean, one key takeaway is your opening remarks talking about how these, pandemic has not only has made us to see why we should and can be autonomous. We can actually be autonomous, and this, talks or goes down to the need for, us to develop, bioinformatics and all other resources to aid scientific research here in Africa. Okay, so thank you for that. I'd like to move to the next question. What are some of the applications of bioinformatics that is most relevant, in Africa today? All right, looking at the various researches or the various possibilities from bioinformatics. So, what are those applications, that we can readily point to that are very relevant in Africa today? I think I would like to start from Dr. Adrienne again. Sorry, permit me to start that question from you.
Okay, so I think there are more, most of the research. So when we talk about bioinformatics, obviously it doesn't stand as isolation. As somebody previously pointed out, it's an arm to the genomics research projects and priorities that are currently ongoing on the continent. And from my perspective, currently the interest is diseases, mostly your infectious diseases, but also now with the trend and growing prevalence of chronic diseases and lifestyle diseases like cancer and diabetes, there's also a lot of research on that. So I think anyone considering bioinformatics should not only focus on infectious diseases and pathogens, but also look into chronic diseases. So then your population genomics comes to mind, which is something that I believe still has a long way to go on the continent, but it's getting there. Among which really it's currently cancer mostly, but we also have things like cardiovascular disease, rare genetic conditions as well, things like sickle cell anemia and others. But that is on health. And I believe most people sort of gravitate towards health because there's funding for health. There's a lot of interest in keeping people healthy, but we cannot also neglect the loss of biodiversity that is currently happening right under our noses. So Africa being one of the most biodiverse continents, we need to sort of invest in researching and in following up what is happening to our plants, what is happening to our natural resources, in the oceans, in our forests, the animals. So there are a few groups that are also working around that. And while we are on the subject of environment, but also sort of cross-section to health, I know there's also a lot of research around drug resistance, but in the environmental sense. So lots of groups and research projects are looking at antimicrobial resistance genes found in the environment. So in water, principally, sort of to see how these are distributed. And also because those are easier samples to access and study and monitor what is actually happening at the population level. Yeah, I think those are the major ones that I'm sort of aware of, and I'll just let the other hosts present their perspective.
Okay, yes, thank you very much for that response. I think you practically covered a lot of aspects where bioinformatics is actually applicable. One key thing you said was the fact that bioinformatics cannot be isolated. It's actually has a lot of connections with all of the omics sciences, and that is very, very, very correct and true. So, Mr. Hamza, please, would you want to add to that? Do you think there's anything left out from what Dr. Adrienne already mentioned?
Thank you very much, Mr. Adekunle. I think she had almost read out all those aspects that is very, very germane. In addition to what she has said, I think one aspect we are also looking at will be lifestyle disease. And that is just an addition to the list of issues which I've mentioned so far. And as you know, generally speaking, we were talking about preventive medicine now, and because of people's indulgence in a lot of things, lifestyle disease is a factor that will affect people's health in the particularly. So, and that with omics generally, we have a big role when it comes to bioinformatics, to getting things done in the best of ways. Then, most importantly, it has advantage when it comes to personalized medicine. With just like Dr. Anita earlier mentioned, and Dr. Toye earlier in the question that you raised, one of the biggest things that happened to Africa is the pandemic. And the pandemic has opened our eyes to see how global the world is, as being a global village particularly, and looking at how we can be able to see how we can explore these opportunities around us. So I think the biggest thing that has happened to us is for us to look at beyond Africa. How do you have access to bioinformatics, training, knowledge, and application as much as possible? And then just in addition to what you said, I just add lifestyle disease is just another addition. We know about cancer, which has been ravaging Africa and the likes, but with this content, it's a plus.
All right. Thank you very much for that perspective shared by you. And I think just to I remember the American God project that has to do with sequencing the microbiomes of the participants in that project, and I think a lot of lifestyle perspectives was brought into that project. and that goes to tell about what is actually feasible when we talk about lifestyle diseases, as mentioned by Hamza, Mr. Hamza. All right, so I think I want to move on quickly to the next question. And my question would be, what companies or universities or colleges hire or conduct researches that are related to bioinformatics, particularly here in Africa? Okay, we've mentioned the H3 Bionet and the H3 Africa projects earlier on, but are there additional organizations that are involved when it comes to hiring or conducting researches that are related to bioinformatics? I think I want to start out with Dr. Voke. Dr. Voke, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes. Okay, so besides H3 Africa, I would mention a few that are present here in Nigeria. And starting with the Nigerian Institute of Medical Research, I do know that they do quite a bit of research involving sequencing of certain genomes, especially with HIV, which they work on a lot. And now with the COVID that has also come in, they also do quite a lot of sequencing, trying to monitor the variants that are in circulation. And I believe they have had a couple of publications in that regard. Laboratory Biologics is also one of the laboratories on the consortium testing for COVID, and we work together with other laboratories and the Institute of Medical Research in monitoring the COVID pandemic. We also have Covenant University. Covenant University is home for some of the bioinformatics gurus we have in the country, including Dr. Shegun Fatuma, who is in the UK. And then we have Redeemers University, again here in Nigeria, that's in Ede, where we have Professor Happy. And on the private scene, we have 54 Gene. They're also working on the but on the private level. And Biologics is also working together in ensuring that we are building capacity in this space. Those are a few that I can come up with at the moment. Perhaps the other panelists can speak about this as well. Thank you.
All right, yes, thank you very much. Thank you for that. I would want to pass it on to Dr. Adrienne now to also share a perspective, seeing that she actually covers, a number of countries, with her representation from Illumina, okay? But I'd like to add to that question just before you take that, okay? Seeing that we have a handful, just as, Dr. Voke already mentioned, who are into these here in Nigeria, compared to what is obtainable, what is possible. Would you say we have a good number of organizations, universities, and companies actually participating in that space? Dr. Adrienne, please.
Okay, I'll start with your last question.
Yes.
No, we don't. There is still a lot to do. When it comes to, for example, there's a growing interest in Africa as a data source for the diversity of our genome and our biodiversity, right? However, when you look at the database where most of these genomic data is being stored, you are very disappointed when you see how many are sourced or are coming from institutions in Africa or from principal investigators of Africa. So there is still, given that we sort of own the resource in terms of, if you're looking at diversity, the richness, the power of discovery is literally in Africa right now. The actual work and the capacity to get to those answers is still very much lacking. So from where I stand, in Africa, I'll tell you that I won't call specific names, but I'll tell you sort of where you should be looking if you are a bioinformatician trying to get a career perspective. You should be looking currently with the interest of making genomics part of a public health strategy. You should be networking with your Ministry of Health. There's a lot of sort of projects that are being conducted directly by your governments, and these are being monitored or driven, so to speak, by the ministries of health. Now, it trickles down to universities. So you want to look at consortia like those that, like the H3 Africa and others that have been mentioned. You want to look at those consortia and see what sort of projects, because they do list out the projects that they are working on. So you want to see what sort of projects, who are the principal investigators, because most of these people, they now sort of play a dual role of doing the data generation as well as the data analysis. But the ideal situation will be a little bit of specialization. So people focus on the sample collection and generating the data, and then the bioinformaticians, when the skill level is really at its prime, will then mine that data for all the discovery that we are talking about here. So you want to look at research groups in those consortia. And then you also want to look at in the private sector, because not all your universities and research groups have the capacity to own a sequencer for their research. You do have private core facilities that have a number of sequencers of different brands that they manage, and so they generate data for their clients. And currently, most of them are not yet getting into it, but there is a big demand for these core facilities to also assist the researchers with their bioinformatics analysis. So that is another avenue you, as a bioinformatician, can propose your services, your skills, and use it as a way of growing your skills as well, to assist these core facilities to sort of implement this service to their clients. And also you have pharmaceutical companies that are currently looking at using big data for identifying new drug targets and things like that. They are also investing a lot in bioinformatics currently. So for example, in South Africa, you have a company called Roche. It's a multinational company, but they are also very much invested now in doing R&D. So in Africa, most of your companies are not yet doing a lot of R&D, but it's happening. And so you want to keep your ears on the ground for that. Last but not least, I would say you can become a consultant. Like, let's have bio entrepreneurs that are bioinformaticians, right? So you can start your own company, go to people one-on-one, offer your services and help out, because most people are really expert at collecting superb premium samples, preserving it, doing the DNA, RNA extractions and doing all of that. But then they cannot get to the discovery part of it that lies in the power of bioinformatics. And also you have your clinical side of things. There's a lot of talk now to have precision medicine, and most of your clinicians, they know the concept, but they need someone in between the data as it comes out of the sequencing, or and to come into the form of a report that they can then translate into a decision or a counsel to their patients. So those sort of things. And I said last but not least, but I'm also thinking about another sector that is growing, which is smart devices. Smart devices that are making use of multi-omics data. to sort of put together algorithms to power devices that will sort of tell you, eat this, don't eat this, drink this, don't drink this medication, not that one. So those startups are also coming through. I hope I haven't taken too much time, but
Thank you. Yes,
it's a bright future for bioinformatics in Africa.
Yes, I agree with you. Thank you very much for that. You've practically covered lots about the areas of applications and opportunities that exist in the bioinformatics field. Okay, so now I think to tie to that will be for us to quickly discuss around the educational and training part. All right, and so quickly, I think I want to start with those who are heavily involved with training institutions. So, Dr. Anita, I'd like to ask, how come is it that many universities are not actually invested or participating in formal bioinformatics training? I mean, they are not, they are not offering bioinformatics degree, especially at the undergraduate and even at postgraduate level, as it is currently in Africa. So why is that so?
Yeah.
Dr.
So
Anita,
thank you very much. As we've been discussing, bioinformatics itself in Africa is still very new. People are aware of it, but we haven't really integrated it into what we do. As universities, individuals are applying bioinformatics in various capacities. You talk to almost every student, they are analyzing some sequence data, or they've learned how to blast data or something. But we haven't gotten to that point where it is actually incorporated as a course or as a program, a master's or PhD program. I think that University of Ghana, the last I checked, there were about 4 or 5 universities in Africa that had a master's in bioinformatics. So it is coming up, but it's catching up. And the other thing is that the trainers themselves, a lot of people, Africans who have trained in bioinformatics, are still in the diaspora because they think that there is no market for them. So that is another problem. And some people, what I've noticed is that people are shying away from bioinformatics because our training does not give the biologists, especially, that strong mathematical background to be able to embrace the thinking as a bioinformatician or even applying bioinformatics extensively. So the universities themselves must have a change in curriculum such that anybody taking an undergraduate program, not necessarily in bioinformatics, but any biology-based program, must understand the kind of data existing now and how you can simply understand it. That way, moving on to either the master's level, if the university brings in a bioinformatics program, it will be embraced by the students. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much for that perspective. I think due to our time, we might not have time to discuss many of these further, but I believe, some of the perspectives already shared by all the panelists, all along has, go along in throwing a lot of light into what we would actually want to expose the participants of the symposium to when it comes to bioinformatics needs and training in Africa. There is a need for us to, hand over to the US team now to take their sessions. But I would say, in wrapping up, that after the symposium, we at OmicsLogic Africa would be reaching out to a number of institutions, universities, and also welcome collaborators that we can work together to achieve the goal of scaling significantly the training aspect when it comes to bioinformatics. So we look forward to being able to integrate or partner with a number of institutions, universities to leverage our resources and tools. And I think one of the challenges, I mean, in addition to what Dr. Anita mentioned, should be infrastructural gaps. You know, the infrastructures, the resources needed to, actually carry out informatics analysis is quite demanding. We are in Africa where internet is still a big issue. All right. So as we move forward and having access to good infrastructure that can drive bioinformatics, I believe will also help a lot of people coming into the field. And that is one thing actually we are proud of at OmicsLogic Africa, right? Because we have a cloud-based infrastructure that can help participants to be able to conduct some of these researches right there, in the cloud without having to bother about the space or internet and all of that. If they were to system. So on that note, I want to wrap up this section. I want to thank all our panelists